begin. Before we do though, I have one request, and then we can make this after you convene the meeting also, if the board would like to discuss it. But the request is to do some reordering of the agenda, so that we can have Interim Chief Brixius present on the items later in the agenda and do that first. So we can, if the board would like to vote on that, that might be a good way to start the meeting after we go through the opening business.
Okay, very good.
Before we get there, excuse me, Brandon. Brandon?
Yes.
Brandon?
Yes.
You're echoing. At least for me, you're echoing. Just
Good evening, everyone. Glad we could come together for the meeting. Brandon, would you like to start us off with some disclaimers?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I want to provide a few reminders to ensure that the COVID-19 provisions of the Kansas Open Meeting Act are met. Board members and other meeting participants must state their names and titles each time they speak. Various members of city staff are present via Zoom and in person. We must also state our names and titles each time we speak. All motions will need to be stated clearly. After a motion is made and seconded, the chair will call on board members individually to provide their vote. Then the chair will announce whether or not the motion carried, as well as a count of the vote. The agenda for the meeting provided instructions for how to submit public comment and how it would be handled. Written public comment was hopefully received by the posted deadline. And I know that we also have at least one member of the public joining by Zoom, no members of the public joining in person who would like to speak this evening. The chair will call for in-person public comment for those without access to technology options, and staff will present them if they are here. We will direct them to the podium to speak following social distancing and safety protocols. Finally, I want to remind everyone to please mute their microphones when they are not speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Okay, we're ready to go ahead and start the meeting. Go ahead and start with the, do we want to go ahead and address the agenda when we get there? Brandon?
Yes, please.
That's what I'd like to do. Okay, perfect. All right, let's go ahead with A, approve the minutes. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read the minutes from November 12th, 2020. Is there a motion?
Ann Gibson, board member. I move we approve the minutes for November 12th, 2020.
Sanjay Mishra, board member, second.
Okay, it's been moved by board member Gibson and seconded by board member Sanjay. We're ready to vote on that then. Sanjay, with a yay or a nay?
Yes.
Bill? Bill Graybill?
Board member Graybill, yay.
Board member Jane?
Board Member Jane Gibson, yes.
Board Member Stephanie?
Board Member Littleton, yes.
Board Member Marie?
Board Member Murray Taylor, yes.
And Board Member Jen?
Board Member Jenny Robinson, yes.
All right, and I vote yay. So the motion passes with 7 votes yay, 0 nay. Okay, let's move to item B, public comment. Brandon, do we have anyone to speak at this time?
So Madam Chair, I'm going to ask Alex Kerr if they intended to speak during public comment or if it was specific just to agenda item number 1.
Okay.
It was for agenda item number 1.
Great, thank you. So Madam Chair, we have nobody in person attendance, so I believe we can move on to the next item now.
Okay, very good. We'll go ahead and move to C, agenda items. And let's take a moment to review those and consider the request that was made at the beginning of the meeting. And that's to look at the agenda and make a motion to rearrange the agenda to accommodate a presentation by Acting Chief Anthony. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Chair, this is Brandon McGuire, Assistant City Manager. Thank you for considering this. Interim Chief Anthony Brixius is joining us tonight to speak to item number 5. But this is a big milestone for our police department, and they are actually running their first shift out of the new facility. So he has commitments over there to make that a smooth transition. It's quite a complex operation, as you can probably imagine. So if it pleases the board, the staff would request that we reorder the regular agenda to move item number 5 to be considered first so that Interim Chief Brixius can present on that item.
Okay, very good. So there's a request to move Acting Chief Brixius, his presentation up to number 1 from number 5. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Stephen Littleton, yeah, motion to move that to number 1, please.
Okay, Stephanie made the motion. Is there a second?
Sorry, Bill.
Bill, I think I heard you. Okay,
Oh,
Bill was a
that's
second.
Board Member Grable. I'll second it.
Thank you. Okay, very good. All those in favor signify with a yay. Board Member Gibson,
Yay.
Board Member Misha,
Yay.
Board Member Taylor,
Board Member Murray Taylor, yes.
Board Member Robinson,
Board Member Robinson, yes.
Board Member Littleton,
Yes.
Board Member Graybill.
Board Member Grable, yay.
Chair Salvini, yay. That's a unanimous vote of 7. Okay, we're ready to then move to this substitute, item 5 that we've moved to the top. And we'd like to give the floor to you, Acting Chief Brixius. At this time, too, I would like perhaps an introduction, Stephanie, if you don't mind, to this item, to give some context as well.
Sure, you bet. This board member, Stephanie Littleton. I was really just simply looking for, since this, I kind of went back through the notes, looking at what we had missed out from about the April meeting and such. We had a number of items on the agenda before Marie and Jenny, so that they wouldn't have any knowledge, but some things that we had missed. And we were actually, one of the things, and I'm not asking for any particulars tonight on this, maybe just to maybe land on a date. We get another presentation for the community outreach activities for 19 and 20 for 2019, 2020 to kind of get us up to speed. If we can maybe consider that on the next couple of, one or two agendas. That's one thing, but just the others, just looking for at least at minimum some update for status that I know we've been working on for quite some time for the initiative for the LGBTQ liaison and enforcement context study. And I know that the academy, I understand the reasoning. There's been a couple of police academies each year. I just thought I would kind of circle back since it's been, 3/4 of a year since I asked that question, Chief. So that's what I'm just looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Chief?
Chief, we cannot hear you. Still cannot hear you. Maybe just try talking louder, huh?
Brandon, a note of clarification, please. This is Chair Salvini. Is he acting or
Interim.
interim? Thank you. I wanted to
Yes.
use the accurate terminology.
Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
Are you able to hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Thank you. All right. I had to unplug my microphone. So just thank you. Thank you for the questions, but really thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to you and for rearranging your meeting. And I apologize for that. It is a pretty big day for us. Just a few hours ago, we had our last shift briefing at the Law Enforcement Center there at 111 East 11th. And here really shortly, we're going to have the first shift briefing for the incoming midnight shift at the new police facility. So certainly there's still some more things to get ready. And we are excited for that. It's going to be quite the change for us in a positive way. We'll be able to positively impact how we serve the community. So I think there was 4 questions, what I got, and I've been forwarded an email, and I think we've already kind of addressed that the community outreach will probably be at a future time. As you might expect, 2020 is pretty significantly impacted by COVID, especially as we really started in February, March, shutting down most of the activities. One thing I am happy to report, though, is that the Blue Santa program that we're strongly affiliated with is still serving the community this year and doing some things to have some contactless delivery presents and food to make sure that community members might get presents for their children and make sure that they have a great meal to eat on Christmas. So I'm excited for the work that the folks at Blue Santa have done, and that's really a great program serving many, many families here in Kansas, or excuse me, here in Lawrence. So a couple things, the context study. You might hear a reoccurring theme here of COVID. So the folks in the study have asked all the members of the different law enforcement agencies, us, Douglas County, Baldwin, for an extension based on data, meaning that there's not as many traffic stops, there's not as many pedestrian stops taking place as there normally is because there's just not as many people out. So there is actually a request that just came through a day or two ago to extend the study. That would come with some funding. So certainly there's other questions around that need to be answered. And then what amount of data that they might need, and if we're able to accomplish that since we're still in COVID times. So that is where it's at right now, is the request for the extension, and I would suspect that we'll be getting together as a group here in the coming weeks to make a determination that is going to take place. As far as the LGBTQ liaison, obviously it's impacted by COVID as well. Officer Amber Roden is currently working with Casey Toomey on Assistant City Manager Casey Toomey on the equity piece of the strategic plan. She recently met with Dr. Muhammad, the new Equity and Inclusion Director, and is going to be working on some different diversity issues. And she was also able to shadow the Casey, Missouri liaison in the springtime prior to COVID. So COVID does affect it, but I would tell you one of the things that probably affects it most is that Officer Roden's primary job is patrol, and it's not being the liaison is not her full-time duty. And I know, Stephanie Littleton, you mentioned running multiple academies a year. And as we get into talking about a citizens academy, you know, we obviously do have COVID, but we are running 2 academies a year because of the number of police officers were down. And I can talk about that in a minute, but what that means by running 2 academies a year, and to take you back, traditionally we would run a 24-week academy followed by about an 18-week police officer training program in which the academy directors and different people participate in to make sure that everything is going right before we release them on their own. And on top of that, when you run academy, at a minimum, you have about an 8-week spin up where you're doing background investigations, where you're doing the hiring process. And then we used to then run a citizens academy over the course of a couple of weeks with the remainder of the year where we weren't having academy. So currently we are running the academies back to back. We've been doing that for about 3 years now. In 1991 or so, there was 2 really, really large classes. And so we've experienced a great deal of retirements and other attrition. So catching up has been quite difficult, especially just in the times of the world right now. It's a little bit more difficult to hire police officers. I think when I started, there was about 300 people at the application process, and now we'd be lucky to get 50 in the application process. So certainly quite the difference. I think last month, because of our shortages. So for a little context, I think we're down 12 or 13. We have 10 in training. We just recently hired 2 experienced hires, but people in training are not able to do the full-time duties, and we have 3 on military leave. So we are operating significantly, almost 20, 25 people under our staffing numbers. So last month with COVID, as we get people out for contact tracing, things of that nature, exposures that they have here at work, we ran almost 100 shifts of overtime just to fill the minimums for patrol. So while we would certainly love to do a little bit more as far as like a citizens academy, a lot of our patrol officers are part of the teams that do that, and they're focused on the academies and just running the basic numbers that we need to get. If I'm just being candid, I wouldn't anticipate us being able to do it in 2021 either. If possible, it'd probably be at the end of the year. We're going to be starting another academy here, I believe, in May. So this one will graduate here in the next month or 2. They will begin their academy process, and we will already be beginning hiring processes here in January. The first testings will go. So it's been quite challenging to maintain that kind of pace. And we've actually moved someone from the public affairs office into the training unit to help with some of those duties because we were just not able to keep up with the amount of work that it takes to both run academy, prepare for academy, and then properly view the police officer training program. That's kind of where we're at in the world. I know it's not the happiest point. We have some other happy news that we're in right now. But it's kind of the reality that we're facing is the difficulty to maintain minimum staffing and then to get back up to staffing. So I would take any questions on any of those items.
Okay, the floor is open for questions. If there are no questions, I'd like to thank you very much for taking time to come and address some of these issues, and looking forward to scheduling in the next couple months. Stephanie, and we'll follow up and talk about that at the end of the meeting in terms of looking at what we'd like to do going forward the next 2 months following up on this. Okay. No questions? Any follow-up, Stephanie?
This board member, Stephanie Littleton, I appreciate Chief for the update. I know you have, a lot of the numbers are down and such for staffing and such, so totally understand. I do have one thought in mind. I just like to ask regarding maybe the potential for utilizing a couple of
community members for the LGBTQ training and the bias-based training with the PD. And I don't know when that may next be up for you all. But as you may or may not know, I've provided a couple of names from the community, Jay Pryor and Diane Silver. And I think maybe 1.5, 2 years ago. And at some point, I think it'd be really important that we utilize some of the members from the community to assist, that are specific to that marginalized group. So I'd hope that maybe at some point we could get them, into that mix to help with that training.
Yeah, I don't know if they have contacted or been in contact with the training unit as of yet. I do know that our bias-based policing comes up. We actually do it annually, but we do additional bias-based policing training as well, and that's through the program from Dr. Lori Friedel. And so we'd certainly be willing to at least listen to and evaluate any program to see if it can fit the needs of what we're trying to accomplish.
I'd appreciate it. I think the last time I'd spoken with Jay Pryor, and he's on the HRC board.
But anyway, I think he was working possibly alongside some others with the city to look at that initiative to help with some training for the city. He's very, very good on the training piece of it. So I can follow back up with him, but I appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you, Stephanie. Any questions? Any other comments? Okay, if not, thank you so much. Really appreciate having you here, Interim Chief Brixius.
Very close. Brixius, but yeah, thank you again for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item then. The next item, which is the discussion of the draft ordinance. Let's roll up our sleeves and get to work. I think this might be our last go with this, perhaps, but let's see. So if you'll just go ahead and call up those documents and we'll walk through it. And Randy, will you be our guide, please? And thank you so much for the memo summarizing. Really appreciate it.
Yes, this is Randy Larkin, Deputy City Attorney. I think, other than I think we did forget a word or two in section 12505, I think what our goal was to capture everything that the board had talked about last time. In that particular section, and I know it's been corrected, but I don't think it's on the agenda yet. It should state that in that last sentence that the liaison will not be present or participate. I think my current version or the version that was posted has just participate. I was corrected by the board to be present or participate in executive session. So that's been changed already, although that may not be for the board discretion or not in the board's possession at this point in time. And then I think the memo's been updated. Other than that, I think we've captured everything that was discussed at the last meeting and got it to where the board wanted it. And so if the board has any questions or comments going forward on any of the particular sections, I think we're ready.
Okay, I hope everyone's had a chance to read it and study it, particularly those sections that were addressed by particular board members at the last meeting. Let's walk through the documents real quickly. And is your preference perhaps to move through the summary or go back to the ordinance? What's the board's preference on that? Jane?
My preference is, Jane Gibson, board member, is that we don't need to go through it again. We've done it and done it and done it.
I agree.
My view would be to, if nobody has any corrections or anything, ask individuals if on the board if they have something they would like to raise for discussion. That should be sufficient. And then when we're done with that step, maybe call for a motion.
Very good. Thank you.
Just my opinion.
I have, okay, go.
Board Member Taylor and then Mishra. Marie?
Board Member Marie Taylor. So just to be clear that the draft ordinance that that's on the posted for the agenda does not include
Right.
that revision on that it would be depending on the liaison's presence would be depend on whether it was approved by the board. Is that, so I just want to make sure that if that revision is not captured in the draft that we have, that we don't end up voting for a version that doesn't have that. That's all.
Agreed. Yes.
Yeah, I believe you could just say, vote on the version with the alteration to 1-2505 if you're okay with whatever it is here. And if there's any other changes that want to be made, then you could just go at it that, or adopt it that way.
Okay. Okay, let's start with the first page through section 12503 on the first page is with the considerations, edits, modifications that came up at the last meeting from board members. Does that meet and satisfy? I'm so sorry, Sanjay. Yes.
So my comment was for 12502I. And I see the first sentence is fine, racial or other. I think the second sentence is too constraining.
On I?
Yes,
Okay.
that should go. If it's, all we are looking for is, this is a clarification again. What we are looking for is the first sentence.
Okay, if I could turn your attention to that in the ordinance, then Marie, I saw your hand go up.
Board Member Marie Taylor. So we are talking about 1-2502I, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think that once that the first sentence defines racial or other bias-based policing, then you don't have to then continue on to describe it what it's not.
What
So
it's not?
strike
Okay.
out from starting with when to used, comma, and then you could strike all of that and you would still accomplish what Board Member Mishra is suggesting. So it doesn't have to be so repetitive once you've defined.
Right. And the purpose of that, and this is in the existing one, and it's been in every version. The purpose is, for example, if someone were to say, if a police officer were to use houselessness, say, for example, as a basis for taking a law enforcement action, that would be racial or other bias-based policing. But if the report comes over the intercom that it's a houseless person who's 5'3" and has been, had committed some vandalism or something like that, so it's part of the description, but it's not the sole description, then it could be used. If you cut out this last sentence, anytime that any of these things would be used, for example, if someone was described as Asian American, that would be a problem. So if it's used in conjunction with other items or other descriptors, it's not a problem. But if it's used solely as the basis of the police action, then that's the problem. That's why we have the clarification at the end, and that's the purpose of it.
Jane first, then maybe you are saying what I'm thinking. So go, Jane.
Thank you, Misha. Board Member Mishra, Board Member Gibson, yes.
I just wondered, Board Member Jane Gibson, I just wondered if Randy, if the notion of unreasonable use, which is in the first sentence, isn't sufficient to capture that. I think
it may very well be, but I just wanted to explain the purpose. And if you wanted to, if the board wanted to cut, oh, sorry.
I appreciate that. I think that Marie and Sanjay were just trying to be more efficient with the language and cut out the repetition there, because we don't have to have it. I mean, it doesn't bother me that it's there, but we can remove it. And that doesn't really change the meaning at all.
it can be removed. I was just explaining the rationale for having it there.
Thank you. Okay, Board Member Mishra, then Littleton.
Sanjay Mishra, board member. The other reason I wanted that out is because if it's racial, even if you use other conditions, but you primarily target houseless people, it is racial. So I don't want to give an out. It's very clear. If you target too many of these people, if there's profiling, it's profiling. That's where I come from.
I don't disagree with that, but there may be a situation where it's part of the description that comes out over the radio or something of that nature, and it's used to try to locate a suspect perhaps. And at that point in time, we don't want that being racial or bias-based policing. We want that to be just, you know, hey, that was part of the description that was given by maybe somebody who's a community member, gives a description of, I was mugged or I was robbed by somebody, you know, with those descriptions. So I just wanted to clarify that's why it's there.
Thank you. Board Member Littleton.
This board member, Stephanie Littleton. So Randy, I'm following you. I think the combination needs to be there. However, maybe you take some of the chunk of the second reasonable piece out, but I understand the combinations needed. So I don't know if you can, Marie, you can speak to that too. You probably all know best how to word that, but.
Sure. Board Member Taylor and then Mishra.
Board Member Marie Taylor. So what about, Randy, if we said something like, shall not be racial or other bias-based policing when such descriptive characteristics are, and then used in, so that you're not like some other way of describing what you just laid out in terms, and just refer to as the above referenced descriptive factors or something.
We could do something like that, yeah. I could do that. We could use like the foregoing list of factors are not used or something of that nature. Yes, we could do that too. So it's not as repetitive.
That sounds perfect.
Yeah, sounds good. Board Member Mishra.
Sanjay Mishra, board member. So I thought that's captured in deciding whether to initiate a law enforcement action. But I will defer to the board.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on this? Everyone pretty satisfied? Okay, thank you, Randy. And
Thank you.
for getting us there. Okay, anything else up to 2503? Okay, if not, let's go ahead and move forward. Let's go 2504 and just through 2506. Is everyone pretty satisfied with the that the edits and the changes reflect? Board Member Gibson.
Just to Jane Gibson, board member, just to confirm what Randy said earlier, that we do want the change in 12505.
Right.
That'll say shall not be present or participate except by invitation of the CPRB.
Yes, and that's in my version currently right here, right now. And that was my mistake. I just conflated participate and present, but I remember the discussion being be present and participate, and that's a more accurate reflection of what the board decided. So it shall include be present or participate in reviews, etc.
Okay, is everyone clear on that then? That would be the last sentence, correct?
Correct. And
Yeah.
basically before the word participate, we will add the words be present or participate.
Okay. Okay, anything else in those three sections? Okay, if not, let's move forward to 2507 on to the end. Any confirmations, affirmations, edits, questions? Board Member Mishra? You're good. All right. I see the thumbs up. All right. There's good silence here. Satisfied silence. Okay. Bill.
This is Board Member Graybill. Are you going to bring back the changes and we vote on it the next time then?
Randy?
We could do it that
Can you-
way, or you could vote on it, adopting it with the 2 changes we discussed tonight, and then I would send forward those through Brandon. So that's up to the board's discretion, however you're more comfortable with. If you'd like to see it one more time before you vote on it, that would be fine, or you could vote on it with those changes.
I would like to see it anyway.
Thank you, Bill. Board Member Littleton?
I just wanted to make one comment first, Randy. I think your staff's done an exceptional job.
Absolutely.
I just want to put that out there, and the write-ups for the community engagement are exceptional as well. That's an excellent piece that's going to help connect all the dots. But I'm going to circle back to Bill's thoughts. I actually think I'm just one of this board, but I feel, I would move towards, let's agree on a couple of pieces, small pieces, and move this forward. It's been a long time coming.
So you're concurring with Bill then? Okay.
I'm not. I'm recommending that, my side of things, I would recommend that we, agree on the couple minor changes, if that's all there is, and approve it.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Okay, Sanjay.
May I ask? Tonia?
Yes, Sanjay.
Quick procedural question, and Brandon may help us. If we approve it today, when will it go before the city council?
This is Assistant City Manager Brandon McGuire. I think we'd look to the board for that direction, actually. I know that, and maybe that is a good discussion to follow the next item on the update from the Community Engagement Subcommittee.
So then I see it's still not packed and baked to go to the city council, because we have to still take it through community feedback. So then what Bill is saying is also makes absolute sense that we should. And hopefully, if Randy will quickly cycle back, that's the version we can put out for the community to give us feedback on.
Okay, Stephanie?
Board Member Littleton, sorry. So Sanjay, if we did that, then we would have to wait till the following next meeting then that to approve it and then move to the community engagement. I was trying to initiate possibly agreement tonight. That way we can move forward with the community step, because that's the next one that's going to take, we go to the city commission. Go ahead, Sanjay.
Thank you. Sanjay Mishra, board member. So Stephanie, I was thinking that we, given that changes are not major, given that the changes are not, I think not major. One is major, not major because we have all agreed onto it, that as Randy shares that version with us, it can go into community. So maybe the board should vote. It's not finalized because till we hear back. So if we hear back from the community that these things need to be changed, we'll have to change it.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah. I mean, you make a good point in that respect. I guess what I was really trying to do, and we can probably do it in the same respect, no matter whether we approve it tonight or not, from what you're saying,
Yes.
that we can move it because it is minor. So if we all agree on it, we can move it to the community piece, because it is minor. So.
Okay, Jane?
I wonder, Jane Gibson, board member, if we could find a happy medium here and agree, or we could have a motion to move it with these changes for community input, but without approving the final version of the ordinance, since we don't have that final version yet and won't until we've heard from the community. Would that satisfy Stephanie, Sanjay, Bill? Because that doesn't approve it finally, Bill. It just lets us take it to the community.
Don't need any schooling.
Huh?
I don't need any schooling on it. I understand.
I'm just asking if you're okay with that compromise.
Anyone interested in entertaining a motion to that end? Stephanie?
Board member Stephanie Littleton, I think, Jane, that's a perfect solution to what we're trying to get to. So I'd like to motion, bring forward a motion to, I'm assuming, I'm not sure if we're there, if everybody's in agreement with where we're at this point, but if we are, with a couple minor changes that need to be made, that we approve it with those in mind so we can move this for community engagement. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Is there a second? I see.
Jane Gibson, board member. I'd like to offer a friendly amendment, Stephanie. Rather than approve it, I think we could approve it as a draft.
I'll take that.
I just want to be, I think we're all agreed that we're not ready to approve a final version. So I just want that to be in the language of the motion. Is that okay?
Absolutely, board member Stephanie Littleton, absolutely. So a motion to approve
For the draft. That makes total sense.
Okay, there's a friendly amendment on the floor for language. Then, board member Littleton. In the motion?
Yeah, board member. Yeah, that's my motion, so yes.
Okay, very good. Then we need a second.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
this is Assistant City Manager Brandon McGuire. I do know that Alex Kerr, a member of the public, would like to speak to this item. So I would advise before taking the vote, going ahead and hearing from Alex.
Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate that. And thank you for reminding. I was thinking we would move through this and then do that, but this is a perfect time. So let's go ahead and have Mr. Kerr take the floor. Mr. Kerr, thank you so much for being here this evening. Stephanie, would you like to, do we have any timeframes on this one, on the community feedback on agenda items?
This board member, Stephanie Littleton, Alex, you would have up to 3 minutes, but we can entertain if there, if you need to do any additional beyond there, because we would love to hear what you have to say regarding this matter. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stephanie. Mr. Kerr, please.
Okay, so I'm Alex Kerr. I live in Lawrence, Kansas. I've been watching this and been working on this with the community a lot because I'm a community member. And this is one of the things I do. I work with the community. What you have with what board member Littleton proposed is exactly what I have people who I've talked to and what I've looked at from, because I have looked at this draft multiple times and looked at every bit of it because I wanted to make sure that we're doing the right thing for this community and getting the right draft. So I'm with this the motion that you have right now or are about to do. I'm agreeing you should do that. As a community member, I think you could do that. Yeah, so that's, yeah.
Okay, Alex Kerr, thank you so much for being here this evening. Thanks for taking the time to engage with the work that the committee's doing, and really appreciate it. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, let's go ahead and jump back to Stephanie's motion then. And as it was amended by Jane, and we don't have a second there. Sanjay?
Second.
Okay, Sanjay's got a second there. So I'm going to try to restate the motion. Oh, Marie, a discussion.
Marie Taylor, board member, and just to be clear, this motion does include revisions to the document that we've all discussed. Okay, just checking.
Absolutely. In fact, in the discussion piece, before I go back to try to reframe the motion before we vote, to be specific, once again, it deals with the first correction that Mr. Larkin brought to the group, and that was the last sentence in 2505, correct? That should be present or participate, okay? So that is the first one. And then the second one brought to us by Sanjay, and that was 2502, and that was I. And making some more efficient language changes that still reflect the intent of that paragraph. Would that be fair to say? Okay, and I think Randy is going to work on that. But again, the spirit and the intent there really doesn't change. It's just a more efficient use of words without changing the intent, right? Okay, so,
To be specific, what I'm going to say is,
okay, thank you.
it is not racial or other bias-based policing when any of the foregoing factors are used in combination with other identifying factors as part of a specific description of a person to initiate a law enforcement action. So I would replace that whole laundry list with just any of the foregoing factors.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. So going back to the motion then, the motion made with an amendment was to approve the ordinance as it is, as of the final draft, not the final copy, but a piece with these two revisions that we feel comfortable going forward to start the community engagement process, okay? And it was seconded by Sanjay, and we're ready for a vote. Any more discussion? If not, let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor, yay. All those opposed, nay. I'll start with Sanjay.
Yes.
Bill?
Board Member Graybill, yay.
Jane?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Marie?
Board member Marie Taylor, yes.
Jen?
Board Member Robinson, yay.
Very good. And Chair Salvini, yay. The votes have it for 7. Unanimously, it passes. So Stephanie.
If I may, this board member, Stephanie Littleton, I just want to make one quick comment to Alex. I want to applaud him for really following along. This has been a long process for all of us, even, especially the original group here. But as I heard him comment, that he's followed along through this, really following for the community. But I just want to kind of circle back to that, and I applaud him for doing so.
Very good. Thank you. I'd like to take a moment to thank Randy. Randy, thank you so much for the work that you've been doing with us and the work of the group, again, to get us here. So it feels really good. So thank you all very much. And of course, Brandon, thank you for being there for us as well, and Tony and all the others. So, okay, let's go ahead and move to the next agenda item then. And that's to receive minutes from the Community Engagement Subcommittee, and that's from 11/24/20. Who would like to introduce this and provide some context for us? Marie?
Board member Marie Taylor. Jane, did you have your hand up? Did you have a comment? Okay. So first off, I've drafted these minutes from our committee, but I would like my fellow subcommittee members to have an opportunity to add any extra comments or to make any corrections if they have some to offer.
Okay, Board Member Jenny?
Board Member Jenny Robinson. The minutes, I think, Member Taylor for.
Very good. Sanjay, did you have a comment? Hey, did you have a comment? I think he was.
I would echo Board Member Sanjay Mishra. I would echo what Jenny said. Thank you, Murray.
Very good.
Board Member Murray Taylor. So I've tried to be descriptive of that conversation that we had so that you all could follow along and kind of benefit for the discussion and then be able to, you know, essentially jump in to that discussion to offer your own ideas as well. We met also with Porter, who's on the call. So thank you, Porter, for joining us to discuss this issue too. I appreciate it. And some of it, so it really focused in on what are the assets we had to utilize from the city to that would best fit with this effort to get out as much exposure to this matter to the public, given our circumstances, and the fact that we can't meet in public. And we've already, and I don't want to duplicate additional Zoom meetings that would kind of already fall within line with what we're already doing. So that's why we were thinking that the Listen Surveys tool was very good. And during that meeting, Porter also volunteered to draft a communications plans for us to at least get started. So that's also included in the packet for you all to review as well. So I'll just now open it up for discussion.
Very good, thank you. Jane.
Board Member Jane Gibson. So really great start. Thank you all for doing all this work and helping us to get this to the community in such an effective way, I think. I wanted to suggest some additional outreach. I think that the Lawrence Listens is great to include, but I wonder if you would consider also getting it through maybe other community organizations, like sending it to the NAACP, the ACLU, the ministers in local churches, LAN, and other neighborhood associations that aren't part of LAN, to any of the listservs that we participate in that are about Lawrence, members of the community of Lawrence. It seems like the thing about Lawrence Listens is that you get a small sample, and you get a sample of the people that are mostly aware of the availability of Lawrence Listens. So it seems like if we really want to tap into other constituencies, we probably need to reach into other areas. So I'm just throwing out some suggestions for some other ways that we can tap into the community to get feedback on the survey. And I also had a question. I wondered, if we do only the Lawrence Listens, and we already have a way for people to return their responses, but if we were to reach out to other community organizations with surveys, I wonder how, or I guess to whom people would send responses, but maybe that's premature because I don't know if you're interested in looking at other outlets.
Okay. Jenny.
So we had started the discussion of mostly, how to make sure we get this survey and information to communities, organizations that serve people that may not have access to Lawrence Listens, like you're saying. I think the neighborhood association, all of that, I think those are all great, and we're relying on all of our contacts here as a group. But I think we spoke about creating a paper method for this as well that could be like dropped off with, maybe at the community shelter or the library. And I expressed a willingness to reach out to my contacts in the nonprofit sector here to connect those organizations with these surveys as well as pick them up. But I think we're still early in the process of figuring out a list of, who we want to specifically reach out to and target with this survey.
Great. I wonder if you might also think about the community shelter.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, good.
And certainly a variety of different church organizations that represent a variety of different cross section of folk. Yeah. Stephanie.
This is Board Member Littleton. I do see, I think you're meeting again soon.
The 17th.
Okay. First, I want to comment on excellent minutes. I mean, it's very clear. I mean, the work you guys have done, this is exceptional to get us ready to this point. I guess I was just a little curious with your timeline, if on the 12/17 meeting, if that's going to be your next step, trying to, now that we're at this point, to try to get all that pulled together, I would assume.
Board Member Marie Taylor, we were already all in the room, so we decided to pick the next time that we knew we could meet, and we figured we'd do it after this meeting. So that there's no magic, and we knew that we'd have to have another meeting, so we were gonna just put it on our calendars.
That's perfect. I mean, it sounds like it's perfect timing since we're right there, ready to go. So, but excellent. Thank you all.
This is Board Member Salvini, and I'm on number 2A, and the second sentence about a summary of proposed changes. This is a wonderful opportunity to take this kind of really structured document and really think about how do we make it accessible to a variety of different people in ways where it's not, the ordinance is this, but this is what it does. And so breaks it down in a way that really bridges, the pro forma official language over here to, what is this about? What does it mean? What does it mean to you? What can it mean to the community? What does it mean in terms of justice? What does it mean in terms of a variety of different things? And so I'm just wondering if that's on the agenda to talk about, or if that was the intent in A, to really make sure that there is some kind of bridge to really make this accessible. And it's an opportunity to educate folks as well, so well about this, and perhaps even strike some interest in folks to our sustainability, our future, to be perhaps recruit future folks for this group. So anyway, I had a question about that. Jenny?
Jenny Robinson, board member. Dr. Faris Mohammed brought up this point really well. He asked us, essentially, what is our elevator pitch? How do we make this meaningful to every community member, no matter who you are? And I think that I may have dropped the ball with this. I think I brought up starting a Google Doc with Marie and Sanjay to kind of create this elevator pitch, and I was just remembering that today. So I think that was me, but I'm going to get that started this weekend, and I think we'll probably discuss that some more on next week, and we'll certainly get as far as we can over a lunch hour meeting.
Well, absolutely. No, the ordinance is so important because it really just lays out structurally, again, what our charge or intent or what we should be doing. But again, the purpose and where it fits and everything is so important. So I appreciate that approach, because again, I think there are lots of folks that don't know that we exist either. So it's really some public, some community relation building to even other boards as well, but certainly what we're doing. So very good.
Yeah.
Sanjay?
So the board member Jenny said she dropped the ball, but I think based on the discussion we had in that hour, Porter has put together a very nice communication plan. If you see the next document that's set up there, because the messages that will go, the stuff is there. So we are further along. It's, what is it called? What's the title of the document? It was part of the.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The communications plan for CPRB, the ordinance changes and community outreach.
Right, right. Okay, well, if there aren't any questions on the minutes, is there we'll move into that. That's a nice segue there, Sanjay. So what's your pleasure on receiving the minutes in terms of a potential motion? Marie?
Marie Taylor, board members, I'm not answering your question. I just wanted to point out also in the minutes that we did have part of our discussion was trying to think of, as we develop the questions for the survey, to have some thought put into that GAR framework, the
Right.
Racial Equity Alliance framework. And so that will require a little homework on our part to really become much better versed in that tool. And so that's kind of like, I guess, our homework. I know it's been presented to us, but to really get comfortable with that framework too. And when we meet on the 17th, I hope that we've gotten a bit more comfortable, because I think we'll be starting to even try to draft some questions. And I guess overall, I would need to know, and this can be, we can talk about this more with the communications plan itself, how much you want the subcommittee to do independently of the board. Do you all want to say, for instance, is put it on the agenda, the kind of like our elevator pitch, our description of the summary? I mean, like, I'm going to be looking for you all to give us some guidance about what your level of expectation for the subcommittee in terms of actually developing the survey, the communication plans, etc.
Okay, Jane?
Jane Gibson, board member. My own preference would be to see whatever documents, whatever materials the subcommittee produces, so that we can review the elevator pitch and the survey document for sure. I also wanted to come back to Tonia's point about that second sentence. The summary seems to be about proposed changes, and maybe I misunderstood you, Tonia, but I thought that you were pointing to the need actually to summarize the ordinance.
The whole document.
Yeah, so I mean,
yeah.
so changes from the previous version are very meaningful to us because we all worked with the previous version, but there are probably very few people, Alex Kerr being one of the rare exceptions, who know what was in the original ordinance. So I'm hoping that what our elevator pitch will have is more than just a summary of the changes.
I agree, and that was my intent, Jane, because you know, I mean, if I wasn't as engaged, I wouldn't even know that there were any differences. So just learning about the ordinance, learning about the board, learning about the specific changes, and they don't have to be technical, but how we've cleaned up the document to be more precise in defining what our role is and what our intent is, I think could be really helpful. Marie, I saw you and then Jane. Or Jane, go ahead, and then Marie.
I was just going to follow up and say there's a problem here, in that an elevator speech is defined by the amount of time it takes to travel between two floors. And so we can't have an elevator pitch that goes on for 10 minutes. We have to have something that's quick, that can introduce the document, but we need something that allows people to see an overview, maybe in addition to that elevator pitch, which seems like a really good idea. The elevator pitch does, for us all to be able to be ready to say what this thing is, but then to have something that's maybe a little more comprehensive to send to some of these organizations so that they can read an overview, a simple short overview that establishes just what you're talking about, Tonia.
Okay, very good, thank you. Marie?
That's just a suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
Marie Taylor, board member. Can you hear me now? I muted myself. So I think the difficult part of this task is it has to fulfill a lot of goals. And part of it is educational, parts promotional, parts engaging to have someone do the survey, and other part is just background civics in terms of what the board role is as well. So that's a lot to hit. So with one communication tool. So, you know, fingers crossed that we can accomplish all these goals. But I think I like this. I like the feedback that we're getting. It's really helpful. And I think it kind of echoes what we all discussed too during the subcommittee meeting as well. I was envisioning this as having, you know, our main communication tool with links off to say, like, we were even going to include as a link the draft, so that if someone wanted to delve deeper and look at the actual document, that they could follow a link. And then if they wanted to know more background information, they could follow a link, and then that would get them to more information. And then if it was all in printed form, of course, these would all be printed out sections as a packet. So that's how I'm kind of envisioning, like, we have a electronic version that has more dynamic links, and then our paper copy that goes out to other organizations, and part of it will be on individual board members to use their own contacts to send out the, you know, web links as well. So I think that that's probably will be part of our communications plan as we look at that document.
Sure. So I think you're answering a question that I have, Marie, and that is that when we move into, as it is on the agenda in front of us, item number 3, the communications plan, is that connected to the community engagement or a product of the community engagement? Okay, I just wanted to clarify that and make sure that that was accurate. So,
Board Member Marie Taylor, yes, it was an action item from our meeting, which now was completed before the next one. That's why we just brought it to you so we could keep things moving along. So I guess you're really asking, should we just move to approve these minutes and then go into?
I think so. I think that's where I'm fishing. Yeah. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes that have been presented? Jane.
Jane Gibson, board member. I move that we accept the report of the Communications Outreach Subcommittee.
Is there a second?
Board member, second.
Okay, it's been moved by Jane to accept the minutes and by Stephanie to second it. All those in favor with a yay. I'll start with Sanjay.
Yes.
Although Bill.
Board member Graybill, yay.
Jane.
Yes.
Stephanie.
Yes.
Marie.
Board member Marie Taylor, yes.
Jenny.
Board member Robinson, yes.
Chair Salvini, yes, and that's unanimous. That's 7 votes, yay, 0 nay. Okay, very good. Well, thank you all. That's really, it's great work, and I feel like we're ready. All the intense work we've done now, we can see some light going into this engagement piece. Stephanie? Mm-hmm.
Yes, I agree. Board member Littleton. So as I think about elevator speech, right at the second floor, 2 things come to mind when I think of what we've just come all the way through. First thing that everybody likes to hear, or maybe not everybody, but all inclusive. That's the first point I think of when I think of what we've tried to do to be inclusive of everyone. So I think of the term all inclusive and broad scoped. So just kind of throwing out a couple pitch points, because all inclusive has been our goal. Make sure that we're taking consideration all groups, everybody. So anyway, just throwing out a couple thoughts.
Okay, very good. Well, let's go ahead and thank you, Stephanie. Let's go ahead and move on to the draft communications plan. And who would like to walk us through that? And while we're moving here, I would like to thank the Community Engagement Committee for taking the city up on the use of resources, the invitation by the city to access resources and to use staff and these opportunities. So thank you so much. And again, it feels like oh, we're done with the ordinance. Now let's develop a plan. Well, no, we're already there. So this is great. And so is there anyone that would like to walk us through the document?
This is Sanjay Mishra, board member. I know most of this work is Porter's. He took our vague suggestions and created such a fine document. So I appreciate his work on this, absolutely. But I can try to go through some of this, and anybody can chip in. Porter, absolutely chip in if I'm misrepresenting our discussion or anything. So let me start with what board member Stephanie said. And when we look at the elevator pitch, here's the general message. Is what we said is injustice is relevant to everyone. And so that's why we want every community member to be engaged in what we are trying to do. It's not only restricted to the special populations, it's for everyone. And again, so follow that as the bullet about every community member to be eyes and ears of justice is again flowing from how do we, this is opening up another avenue of input to the board. And again, now we have sentences there about what the CPRB should be doing. So this is from our side, this is what we are doing, is we want to make sure. So this will come from, I think the purpose of the board is that we want to make sure that race-based policing doesn't happen. That's the kind of thing. And then we had what you need to know about the updated ordinance and what the CPRB is trying to do. That was the pitch. And it's not that we haven't created the script as yet, but that's the ingredient mix that will go to create our script.
Okay, very good, Sanjay. Comments, questions? I have a very quick question since we're on the planning piece here, at least a communication plan piece. And that's probably directed at Brandon or to Brandon. What kinds of considerations in putting a plan in terms of logistically how we're going to do it, do we need to be mindful about the open meeting situation?
This is Assistant City Manager Brandon McGuire. Can you elaborate a little bit more, Tonia, about your concern or question?
Sure. So let's say hypothetically, when this plan is put together, that at maybe 2 meetings down the road, we decide that 4 board members are going to go to this neighborhood group, or 3 here, or all of us were going to show up at a NAACP meeting, or in terms of how we're going to engage and place ourselves on agendas with different groups and do the outreach. What are some of the protocols there with regard to considerations to the open meetings laws?
Yes, Assistant City Manager Brandon McGuire. The question makes sense, and it's a very good question, and I appreciate your sensitivity to the Kansas Open Meetings Act, as always. That is something that we will need to be very mindful of as we go through this process. If a quorum of the board, so if 4 members or more attend any meeting, then we will be required to provide public notice of the meeting, and that through that process we will be able to satisfy the requirements of the Kansas Open Meetings Act, and that's especially so since the board will be actually discussing the business of the board itself at those meetings. Mm-hmm. So as we work through those, I would envision us coming up with a calendar of public engagement opportunities, and maybe at a future meeting of the board, or maybe we can do it through independent, separate communication with each of the board members, we can get a kind of a count of who would be planning on going to what meetings. I would strongly encourage the board to really think ahead and give us some advance notice so that we don't accidentally find ourselves with a quorum at a meeting that we haven't noticed. And I think there's staff in the city manager's office who can be helpful with helping to manage calendars and make sure that we keep our process well aligned with the Kansas Open Meetings Act.
Okay, thank you. Or comments or considerations going forward. Okay, Jane.
Thank you, Tonia. Jane Gibson, board member. I guess, can you, maybe those of you on this committee, can you tell us how you intend to use this communication plan? What's it gonna do? What's it gonna be for? Is it just to show us what you're thinking, or maybe you can be clearer about what you intend to do with this?
Marie, can I take the first shot at it, and then you can, and Jenny, you guys can chip in. So as we were thinking about it, you have to ask yourself the question, how engaged is the community member, and how much time can you expect them to spend on this? But we still want feedback from as many people as possible. So broadly, we were looking at those three bullet points: community engagement questions. What do you like about the updated ordinance? What do you don't like about the updated ordinance? That gives us some feedback to reconsider before we adopt it. And what's missing in the ordinance? Again, those are broad questions. Generally, the three deltas to make us understand where we are and where we should be as far as the community is considering, and and the last one is a very open-ended question about what would they like to see from this community police review. So broadly, and these are open-ended questions. These are not scalar questions. So depending on how many responses we receive, we may be in for a lot of work.
Yeah, this is Board Member Salvini. A couple of things here in terms of the message, because I get, I think about, I'm a person who has absolutely no knowledge, but I want to understand what you all do and what this ordinance thing is. And I want to participate in my civic, interests. So I'm wondering about, again, that education piece, where there's something that's approachable and accessible to people to help them. And this is going back to the pre-ordinance and then all the work that the whole group has done to come to this more polished document that really is tightened up in terms of our intent. Just to say, look, this is what we've arrived, and this is what we're doing. And I think any feedback whatsoever, regardless of the changes that we've made, is here's the ordinance we've come up with. What say you all in terms of our role and our responsibility? Because again, it may be the first time people are reading it and not really know those specific changes. So this is a redefinition of ourselves, us kind of, I feel like, moving to really address some of the passionate issues of injustice, really, which we were interested in doing this anyway, but really that was a big piece to this as well, in terms of motivation and drive. I get really caught up on what kind of information is provided and what kind of response it might elicit. and are we getting what we want from folks with that process? Does that make sense? So Marie,
Marie Taylor, board member. So what I'm taking from your comments is that perhaps open-ended questions are part of the survey, but that you would want something that was very efficient in terms of their time and their interest. Easily, so like something that gave more options to click buttons perhaps than to write out text. So if it was like agree, strongly agree, not agree, like that sort of type of information to gather. I'm just trying to figure out what.
Oh, sure, yeah, no, I actually wasn't even thinking about tools. I was just thinking about how to make sure we could reach people to be informed enough to be able to respond back. But I do like Likert Scouts a lot. Sanjay?
Sanjay Mishra, board member. So the way I interpreted Tania's question was education of the community so that they could give meaningful response. And in that education of the community on the electronic version, hopefully the links would be hot links for them to go see what we are talking about. And on the paper version, the printed version of the proposed ordinance will be what people are responding to. So that's what we are seeking response about. And not to take us back, but one of the places I think we left it open is the CPRB is responsible for. We left 3 dots there because the 3 of us didn't want to occupy the space. So that's where I think the board can help formulate that for us. And I can propose that this may be the first sentence of the purpose of the board, but that may be that may not be as simply stated. So we could think from that perspective. But does that help, Tonia, with your question, with your concerns?
Yes, absolutely. Again, I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but I'm just thinking about being that audience member. What could be my expectations? How I want to engage, but I'm not sure how. That kind of thing. So I'm thinking from that perspective. Stephanie and Jane, did you have your hand up too? We'll go Stephanie and Jane.
This board member, Littleton, as I look at the messaging, here's what you need to know about the updated ordinance and CPRB efforts. I think that when you're talking about educating, you can, in a short piece of your speech, absolutely, help educate them. Here's what we're coming to the table with. I love the question, what would you like to see from the CPRB? I think that's a great open-ended question that we really need to hear from the community.
Yeah, I agree.
Jane.
Jane Gibson, board member. I'm gonna argue with you, Stephanie. I have to disagree with you respectfully about the question, what would you like to see from the CPRB? The messaging and the purpose of this survey, as I understood it, was to get feedback on the ordinance. The CPRB's purpose and mission and the duties that we have been assigned are much broader than that question. There's community outreach, there's a lot of things that we're doing, but this is supposed to be about the ordinance itself. And that's a question that is huge. And you're right, it's a really important question for us to ask, but not at this moment, because this is supposed to be about this ordinance. We're trying to get feedback on this document, not feedback on us as a board. That's my opinion. So I like the question a lot. I just don't think that it belongs in any sort of a survey, whether open-ended or closed-ended questions about this particular document. And the other comment I wanted to make is on the second bullet point, we want every community member to be the eyes and ears of justice. It's just so, it just strikes me as being so Orwellian. It makes me really uncomfortable to think about that. I don't like it. I just want to say I don't like it. And I don't want that to be one of our messages. I don't think we're trying to promote paranoia or people watching their neighbors closely. I just don't like that notion at all. And then the last thing I'll say is about the first bullet point, which is injustice is relevant to everyone, when of course it is, but I think our message is that justice is relevant to everyone, not injustice. So I'd like to see the framing to be our focus on promoting justice in the vein of positive community police relations.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Any other comments, questions? No, I think it's a great start. Marie and then Stephanie.
Marie Taylor, board member. So what I'm hearing is that or you want the subcommittee to continue making revisions to this plan, and it's a plan. It's a working document for us. It's not, the plan doesn't go out to people in the community. This is just so we could organize the effort internally. That's the purpose of this plan. And then internally, subcommittee will work on some draft language for the elements that we talked about so far, and then develop like a beta version of the survey tool. I think you'd all want to see the questions for that. So that's what I have so far. And then I have an open question for you about time frame, how long what your expectations are for how long the survey is available, what's the time frame for individual board members or in groups of less than three participating in any kind of meetings with organizations in Lawrence. So I get a sense, we put down our timeline from December into February. And I think that'll work well because it won't be overlapping with the city's consultant on reviewing the police. We would actually come in before that effort. So that's all.
Okay, very good. Yeah, Stephanie and then Sunday.
I just wanted to circle back. Jane does make a good point about how do we keep it focused to the ordinance, but what if, not to make it too long, but take number 2 and 3. So what don't you like about the ordinance, and what would you like to see from the CPRB, and maybe kind of combine that and maybe say something more along the lines, ask the question, what would you like to see from the CPRB that is not in this ordinance? I don't know, something along that lines, and just kind of combine that and keep it to the point at hand, what we're trying to do. Just thoughts, that's all.
No, I think this is good feedback for the committee. That's the intent.
That's an improvement, Stephanie.
Thank you, Jane.
I hope that's in the minutes. Okay, Sanjay.
Absolutely. The spirit is to improve this, and so thank you for everybody for their feedback. The rationale, I think there are not many opportunities we will get to talk to the community, to engage in a involved sense, and that's why this is our chance to get something on our board from them. So that's why we had that question. But absolutely, this is working document, so we can move it out anytime.
Okay.
And then to the point of, we want every community member to be eyes and ears of justice. It flows from, the way I look at it is transactional analysis. It's, if you want somebody to participate in a survey, they must find why they are participating in the survey. If they don't find any reason to be responding to you, what's the point? I will not participate. And so our hook, and we may not have worded it the best way, so we can think about it, but this is our first shot at it, to say, you need to participate, you need to engage with us because this is critical for everybody. And maybe that's what we should say. You need to engage with us because it's critical for everybody. But so it doesn't look as negative. But yeah, our spirit was to tell them, you will get something back in some ways if you participate in this.
Very good. Incentive. Jane?
Thank you, Jane Gibson, board member. Sanjay, I quite agree we need a hook. I just don't think we need one like that that scares everybody off. It scares me off. You know, I mean, I found that repellent, and maybe I'm the only one, but I would not participate in a survey that had that as one of its goals. I just wouldn't do that. Okay, but now I forgot what my main point was. Oh, I know. I have a question. You said you don't want the time of this survey's availability to overlap with the consultant. Can you explain why that is?
Marie Taylor, board member. If they have a survey coming out at the same time that we have a survey, then we just could dilute the effort. So, but it's not going to, I don't think it's going to be an issue because I think that the board wants to move more quickly than because I don't think the consultant's at that stage. So I doubt there will be an overlap.
Thank you. Jane Gibson, board member. I just wondered, you said into February, and that seems like a lot of weeks, but when you're doing this kind of work, it might not be enough. I just wanted to ask if there was any possibility in your minds for maybe taking it a little longer if it turned out that we needed it. Say we weren't getting sufficient feedback, or there were organizations that we especially wanted to hear from and hadn't yet. I mean, are you looking for a hard deadline, and does it really need to predate the arrival of the consultant? Do you know when the consultant might have something like a survey out, or?
Marie Taylor, board member, I don't have any information at all like that. Maybe Brandon knows, but the time frame is open for discussion. That's not set. It's part of the draft to put some kind of time frame and expectations. So we can.
I appreciate that. I know that you're not trying to impose a deadline for us, but you're asking for some feedback on the deadline, and I'm just concerned that February is too soon maybe to finish up, even though I know that we all want to get this done. I just want to be sure we have enough time to get enough feedback.
Marie Taylor, member, I agree with you, Jane. It's just that there's like a blank and you got to put the end date of a plan. So this is great feedback.
Yeah. Okay, Sanjay?
Sanjay Mishra, board member. So I absolutely agree with having a flexible timeline, but most surveys, the response is left skewed. Is when you put a survey out, you get a bunch of responses in the first few days. After that, there's a long tail. And we need to ask, but we absolutely need to ask whether we are getting the specific populations views incorporated. What we are worried about, based on how these meetings have run, is we get very little community interaction. Our community interaction is proactive. When we go out and seek input from other people and find what should be done and what should be on the board's agenda and what should the board be doing. So given that, if you tail this out a lot, I was going to use the word, I don't think it's an efficient process, because you're not going to get many responses after 15, 20 days. Everything is left peaked.
Jane?
Jane Gibson, board member. I guess then that leads me to raise another issue, which is about the methodology. I'm all in favor of open-ended questions, and I'm all in favor of some closed-ended questions when you have an instrument to use. Did you consider the possibility of something like an interview guide so that there could be the equivalent of a focus group? Say 3 board members attend a land meeting where everybody at the meeting has a copy of the ordinance, and they have the elevator speech and the documents, whatever materials you all think we should supply. And we have an opportunity to listen to them, to have that sort of a conversation with them and take notes on that. That's a very different methodology. I think it's a very productive one, and you can capture a lot of people's input very quickly, but it isn't the same kind of systematization that you would get with some sort of a survey instrument. But I still think it could be very useful to us, and we could get a lot more data more quickly.
Yeah. Okay, Marie?
Marie Taylor, board member. Yes, I think you've just added a new section to our communications plan.
Focus groups.
Sanjay Mishra, board member.
I
Okay,
feel like
sorry.
I'm back in college, okay? Just kidding.
No, that's Sanjay Mishra, board member. That's absolutely the rationale or reason why we wanted to discuss this. And so
Yes,
thank you,
absolutely.
Jane. Thank you, Jane. Absolutely. And that'll help. And we need to develop our interview booklets so everything is as systematized as possible.
Sure. Another consideration maybe in inserting in the plan is depending on how our meeting schedules go, and this is a logistic piece, for the next 6 months and where we are, I'd like to take a little pilot project and try it and take some notes and then come back to the group and talk about what worked, what didn't work, and try to you know, improve and hone our skills as we move through the process. Does that make sense? And a little experimental time, like to see how it goes, and then what's advice people can share with other people to really try to increase more feedback and engagement from the community. Jane?
Jane Gibson, board member. Usually piloting an instrument is a good idea. It will add to the time, which I think may be well worth it. But you could pilot the different methodologies as well to see if we're asking the questions in a way that's sensible and meaningful to the people that we want answers from. It's probably a really good idea, but it will extend the time. But here's the other thing. You can pilot without, you don't have to ask a lot of people. You know, you can just ask a few people to find out if the questions make sense, because that's really what piloting is about.
Right. Yeah. I think that would be really constructive, and that way when we go with larger groups, then we've got that kind of feedback that we folded into the process for improvement and engagement. Sanjay?
Sanjay Mishra, board member. So am I hearing the intent of the board that the ordinance may not be finalized till summer?
I would hope before summer.
Because I asked that question is because one of the major issues is feedback from the community before you finalize your ordinance, right? And the more you leave it open, we are back to Bill's question, then we have very little urgency.
Yeah.
This is going to be a drawn affair.
Yeah, thinking at least be good to ourselves enough to think about March, end of March, April. It would, I mean, if we set a date to say, hey, this is when we want to take all the feedback, fold it in, do the final ordinance, because we may get a lot of feedback and we're going to have to exercise again, right? Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, you're right. Stephanie?
Yeah, this is a board member, Stephanie Littleton. I sit here and think about such good feedback coming out of everybody, great ideas, but then you have to think about not rushing to getting enough contacts and prioritization. So we probably need to find a happy medium there. And I would lean kind of towards, you have expert helping us with Porter on this call, who's put out some great assistance for kind of a plan, so to speak, but just to look at prioritization and what are going to be the better communication tools and how to move those forward sooner than later. And I'm not meaning let's get it done like January, but we certainly don't want to push it to the summer in order to be effective. We've been trying so hard to become, for the community here. It just makes sense.
No, I agree. Okay, I hope this has been helpful,
Yes,
generating this kind of conversation. Yes, Sanjay.
Sanjay Mishra, board member. So only other point I wanted to make is whatever data we collect, it's not going to be systematic. It's not going to be random. It's not going to be statistically driven. It's going to be primarily convenience driven.
Yes.
The communities, the special people, the organizations that we know. So with that at the back end, I am how much, what do I call it? How much time we want to spend developing the process is for us to decide.
Okay, thank you, Sanjay. We've got Bill and then Jane. Bill?
This is board member Graybill, and I appreciate the work. I know it takes a lot of time and appreciate you doing it. Would it be possible for you all on both committees to come back in January with some specific plans so we could start dealing with those? Or is that asking too much between now and then? And I'm asking that sincerely. I don't, because it may not give you enough time, but it seems to me like we need to get something out there on the board instead of generalities and start going on this thing at some point in time.
Thank you, Bill. Jane and then Marie.
Jane Gibson, board member. I think that the committee should respond to Bill first.
Okay, Marie.
Marie Taylor, board member. So when you say generate the plans, I think you're talking about actually create the draft communications and the draft survey tools, right? That's what we're talking about? That's a request.
Well, what I'm talking about is some specifics as to what you all would propose that we do to get the community engagement on this thing so we can get it off dead center.
Marie Taylor, board member. So I think our plan was the Lawrence Listen survey, and now that we've added in focus groups, I think we'll have to delve into more who would do those and that sort of work. Is that, I mean, I don't know what more in terms of the plan.
Forget I asked it.
So Murray, I didn't hear focus group. Sorry to intervene. I heard interviewing. So listening sessions. So yes, because if it's focus groups, then it's outside our. Yeah. You need somebody trained to do it.
Okay. Jane and then Stephanie.
Well, I don't want to quibble over the semantics of the notion of focus groups. They are listening sessions and they are informal and ad hoc, and we should take advantage of those opportunities. But I wanted really to comment on the schedule. But you know, we have been working on this a long time, and the board has been unable to move on issues of community complaints because the way the ordinance was written to keep us from actually hearing any. So I know that we're all anxious to get going, but this is our one opportunity to get community feedback. And if that's important to the city commission, then we better get it, right? But we do have the luxury of deciding how much and where we go, and we can be flexible on this. We can get as much together, let's say in terms of instruments and a list of organizations we would like to hear from. And I don't know, and I guess when, we always talk about, in our research, we always talk about funding, how much money and time do you have to do it? We don't have any money and we're all volunteers, but we have maybe the luxury of time insofar as we don't have to set a deadline for ourselves. We can instead come back at our next meeting and see where we are, and the meeting after that, after we've done some implementation, we've got some information, and share our information and see where we are, see who we've talked to, who we've missed, and if we need to keep going, we can keep going until we feel like we have what we need. I don't think we need to tie our own hands on this process. Maybe we could agree to allow ourselves a little flexibility to get enough information from enough organizations and individuals that we feel like we do know something about how the community responds to the ordinances we've written.
Okay, just real quickly, I'd like to say that I think in a concurrent way, we can look at polishing materials, scripts, however, so that's one task that we need to look at in terms of the materials that we're going to generate to use for this, and then the plan on how we're going to use them. And so that would be a good start for the next meeting, is to kind of draft up some they don't have to be formal or great or perfect, but just really take from the thinking about the elevator ideas and think about what is the intent of every piece that you want to put out there to inform people about, so they can respond and react, and formulate the questions from then making sure we want to get what we want from folks from each one of those areas. Does that make sense? Like an internal document that can be generated to say, okay, we want to make sure these 5 primary pieces of the ordinance are out there, and that we're very proud of, we're very dedicated to, that are going to address the changes and the intent and everything, make it solid. And then from that, what kind of information do we want back from folks? And then how are we going to do it then? And then the logistic of, are we going to do listening sessions? All the different methods in which we're going to generate feedback. How are we going to keep track of it? How are we going to report it? How are we going to bring it together? And then that might be where we need some help from the city. I'm going to just put that out there. And again, I'm just thinking out loud here. And then how do we pull out all the feedback to organize it in a way to make sure that that's represented in the final ordinance that we do? Does that make sense? I don't know. That might be too much. Yeah, Sanjay?
So I'm going back on the timeline, Tonia. And you were also alluding to it, and all of us are talking about it. I want to seek the input of the expert on the call, Porter, in terms of when the city has done something like this, how long have they left things open, and how many people have responded, so that we get a feel for, is it going to be 500 people or 5,000 people or 25,000 people responding? We want to get a feel for that. Thank you, Porter.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome. This is Porter Arneal, Director of Communications and Creative Resources. Everything I'm hearing is very helpful as we build this framework for moving forward. As far as Lawrence Listens goes, it's a fairly robust tool. We can use it in a variety of ways. It's been growing as we have been using it over the years. And as far as how many people participate in it, one thing I want to say is that what's interesting to us is whenever we do a survey on Lawrence Listens, we see that a lot of people look at the survey. And so there's your educational opportunity up front. They may not take the survey, but they certainly go investigate the survey. So there's an opportunity there. We can see how many people do that. Then after they take the survey, of course, all that information is public immediately, unless they choose to make it anonymous information. As far as timelines, we can leave it open-ended. We can put a very strict deadline on it. There's a variety of options there. And we can build that into the marketing of the communications plan. The other piece that I'm hearing that I think is really important is, yes, it'll be partially up to you all and our community partners to make sure this gets pushed out far and wide. And people are really encouraged, and some hand-holding even to get people to take the survey. And I think that's where the paper versions come in as well, and to really glean that information. And the notion of attending other meetings with short questionnaires and that type of thing I think that's a great idea. I'm processing that in our new Zoom world. And I suspect in a way, it may be somewhat easier to do things like that because of Zoom, but we have to think that through as well. So I don't know if I'm helping fully, but I think that as this gets fleshed out, what I'll also say is once we do get the communications plan solidified and you all are ready to move forward, we can move forward fairly quickly and, get this out there. And to answer your other question, Sanjay, I believe that, a month is probably a good range of time to look at how long the survey will be available to the community. Generally speaking, we may change that and we can adapt that if we need to, but that would be my general thought.
Jane?
Could I follow up, Porter? The other part of that question that Sanjay was asking was also my question. That is, what sample size do you normally get for those surveys, or does it vary too much to say? Could you give us a range of expectations?
This is Porter O'Neill, Director of Communications and Creative Resources. It really varies tremendously. Honestly, feral cats was one of our most popular topics, and we had about, I think, 600 people respond to that. So, you're talking about a civic environment, and, while I would love to say that the most important topics glean the most interest, that's not always the case.
Thank you. Thank you, Porter. Okay, and thank you again, Porter, for your assistance here and your input, and thanks for listening to us to go forward. Stephanie.
So this board member, Stephanie Littleton. So Porter, what I hear is, so the most effective, as far as broad, Lawrence Listens is one of the most effective mediums. What would be the other that you've heard in the conversation? I do get Jane's point. There are some definitely in focus groups that we probably really want to maybe divide and conquer. But anyway, back to kind of the broader scope, what would be some of the others?
I'm not quite sure I follow.
So you said Lawrence Listens was one of the most robust. What would be maybe a couple other choices for us if we wanted to add, looking at, okay, how many different tools do we want to utilize? So we have to kind of some perspective on this.
Okay, this is Porter O'Neill, Director of Communications and Creative Resources. Lawrence Listens is a survey tool, and what I meant was it's a robust as a survey tool. I hope that was clear. And that's really where we landed. I did have some initial thoughts, and quite honestly, I don't remember all the things that we started with, but we really concluded that this was the most effective tool that we have as the city for this purpose. And, mostly what we're trying to do is figure out the best ways to drive as much traffic to that tool or a paper version of that tool. Now, the other thing I'll add to this, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, we have several different social media platforms. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, and there's branches of each of those. Police has Twitter, police has Facebook, et cetera, where we can use all, don't know for sure, we'll add out. But the other tool that's very interesting to me is Nextdoor, because we can target neighborhoods, and if we do approach land, I'm thinking about, as I'm listening to you all, that by bringing this to land and making sure that all those neighborhood organizations are cognizant of this, when we put it out through Nextdoor, we can actually track that data too, how many people respond. Often what we see is we put these survey options on Nextdoor, and we see a lot of response on social media, which is sometimes frustrating. I have to go back in and remind people, we don't really want you to hear from you on Nextdoor. We want to hear from you on Lawrence Listens, but we can glean information that way too. So I think to Sanjay's point, this is not going to be statistically valid information per se, but we can certainly glean a lot of information and gather as much data as possible through not just Lawrence Listens, but all the other tools that we use. And it's fairly easy to get a lot of analytics from all those areas as well. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, very good. All right. So what kind of action do we want to take on the communication plan as it is an evolving document? Stephanie?
This board member, Stephanie Littleton, I would, and I don't know how, for timeline for Jane, but I would almost offer myself to join somebody to once you get the documents together and all, to be one to assist to divide and conquer with land. I've been on that before with Jane, and that's really beneficial. So I'll put myself out there for that.
I think what I want to ask too is we've got the core committee working on the communications plan. Would that be correct? The community engagement, it also is working on the communications plan. Is that, I'm affirming that, okay. And then I'm just wondering what kind of assignments you all can give to us if you're interested in doing that as well. Because I'm interested, I will say, if possible, and again, I don't want to violate the law, but I'd like to work on the communication draft. If you don't mind, that I'd be glad and willing to do that.
Yes. Board member, thank you. Great. So maybe that could be you, me, and Jenny could work on that.
Okay, very good.
Those documents, sort of like the educational pieces of this. And then I would love to nominate Jane to work with Sanjay on the survey questions and the format and what would be the best way to engage people to, because I do have some reservations about just having completely open-ended questions. It may be better that it's in response to something particular and then you have an open question about it, or is it easier for people to just have buttons that click their level of agreement or disagreement with certain aspects? Maybe that's more helpful, because open-ended takes a while to type up, and I've taken surveys where if it's asking me to type too much, then I just close the survey. I don't complete it. So but I would love to have my researchers on this board take advantage of their skill set to help draft that aspect, if I may be so bold.
Jane?
Jane Gibson, board member. I don't want to step on Sanjay's toes, but Sanjay, if there's anything I can do to support your efforts, you can call on me, and I'd be glad to work with you on the questions, but you are the lead on that, and I will just be your listening post and give you feedback, and we can work on it in that vein. But this is yours, and I'll be glad to help you however you need.
Sanjay Mishra, board member. Jane, not my turf at all. This is our playing field. I will not own, I don't want, I cannot own the space. Means you have done it much more than I have. So absolutely. And we can work together. But I also wanted to go back to Bill's comment or proposal about come back to the next meeting with more concrete things so we can have a more focused discussion rather than in generalities. And I absolutely, I would second that.
So I'm hearing that at the next meeting, we're going to produce some work and bring it back in a very good draft form. It won't be final, but probably finalize it after the next meeting, possibly, maybe, I'm not sure. But anyway.
Tonia, when's that meeting?
That is Brandon. Do you have that meeting handy? I have to do a little digging here. Pardon?
January 14th.
The 14th of January? Okay, and that would be on that Thursday? Okay.
Thank you.
Did we?
Okay, again, I'd like to return to some type of action from this group to take on accepting the start of this wonderful communications plan. Is there a motion? And the motion can be to accept it for the meeting, acknowledge it. Jane?
I'd move that we accept the document as the starting point for the committee's outreach.
Okay, Jen Gibson has made a motion to accept it as a start of our process going forward for engagement. Second. Sanjay, seconded. Okay, all those in favor, yay or nay? We'll start with Sanjay.
Yes.
Bill? Bill? Yes.
Board Member Gray Bill, yay.
Jane?
Board Member Jane Gibson, yes.
Stephanie?
Yes. Board Member Littleton, yes.
Marie?
Board Member Marie Taylor, yes.
Jenny?
Board Member Jenny Robinson, yes.
And I vote yes as well, so that's unanimous, 7 yays and 0 nays. So thank you all again for bringing this to us as a great starting point, so we can start moving on that. Okay, let's go ahead and move to the discussion of the future presentation, which, oh yes.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, if I may, please, for just one moment. This is Assistant City Manager Brandon McGuire. I really appreciate the previous discussion. I want to reiterate that staff is here to help and advise as possible, or as you seek our input in developing the public engagement process, survey, etc. Feel free to go through me, and I can help connect any staff. Feel free to also copy Porter on those communications. One thing that I will say, just as an observation of the last couple of minutes of your discussion, there were several documents that were referenced or work products that were referenced, and different people sharing those back and forth. Just so we're clear about the Kansas Open Meetings Act, and so we don't get into a serial meeting violation. If 3 members are working on a document and then that document is exchanged with a 4th member for feedback, that would very likely constitute a violation of the Kansas Open Meetings Act. So I'm not trying to
That's great.
slow down your collaboration, but please just do keep that in mind. And if you find yourself in working on these documents with any questions, feel free to contact me or City Attorney Tony Wheeler directly about that.
Very good, thank you, Marie.
Marie Taylor, board member. So what I am suggesting, just to clarify, for the summary and the educational piece, that it would be me, Tonia, and Jenny working exclusively to present something that then probably we would share with, if it's okay with
Porter for his expertise in writing, marketing and PR communications. And then that document would be presented to the board.
Yes.
At the next meeting. Concurrently, because we're moving fast, that
Sanjay and Jane would be working on some sort of preliminary sketching out of what potential survey questions would look at independently from our other efforts, and then again bringing that to the board, so not all board members would have a chance to see what we've been drafting up.
Yes.
Yeah. And it'll make for an interesting meeting at our next meeting too, because we're going to put together the education pieces and they're putting together questions. So they may be different, and we might find a new draft that needs to happen, and maybe our work prompts some more questions that need to be considered. So it'll be a nice meeting. Stephanie?
Board Member Stephanie Littleton, just a thought towards the COMA concerns. I've been assuming that kind of like you've done in the past, Brandon, if those of you working on different pieces of it and you really want some exposure to the rest of us, can that be sent out via Brandon for us to at least preview and kind of go that direction? If there's necessity, or is that not possible?
Good question.
Assistant City Manager Brandon McGuire. That would be a one-way communication, one-directional communication sort of, sending it out in advance of the upcoming meeting so that you can read it and start formulating thoughts, but not to share thoughts through email or phone calls or additional meetings. Yeah. And just to be clear, as Board Member Taylor has described it, I do think that makes sense. My concern is just if those paths cross, then let's just talk about that first so that we can adequately notice that.
Very good, thank you. Marie?
Marie Taylor, board member. Yeah, I know we'll be making some progress, but not as much progress as if we could always continuously be meeting all the time for the next month, right? But at least it's a start, and we've kind of broken out pieces so everyone's sharing some bit of the responsibility overall. So I thank you for accommodating that and not just having it just be the subcommittee who is trying to put all this together. And just to clarify then, on the meeting that we will have, the subcommittee will have on the 17th, we'll probably then just focus on making changes to the communications plan to get it into to reflect the comments and the feedback that we received at this meeting, to kind of capture those in that working document.
Very good then. Sanjay?
Sanjay Mishra, board member. I know that Murray has volunteered both Jane and I into the survey set. I was going to put it out to both Bill and Stephanie if they wanted to join. Either of them wanted to join in framing of questions or creation of this data gathering instrument.
Stephanie?
This board member, Stephanie Littleton, I am open to assist. So, this is not really, I've worked a lot in different spaces, not necessarily, I know Jane has great expertise in this, but I am absolutely here to put the 2 cents in. So, but if Bill wants to, I don't want to take up that space either.
You may have the honor.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, so absolutely, if you two want.
So much, yes, thank you.
Okay, all right, very good. Okay, Brandon, thank you so much for the reminder. And so if there are any questions about that or the Open Meetings Act or anything like that, please call Brandon. He's very available and get that checked. So, okay, I think we're ready to move to the last item on the agenda. And that's the discussion of future presentation by the District Attorney-elect Suzanne Valdez. And Sanjay, why don't you take this because this wonderful idea came from you.
So this is Sanjay Mishra, board member. And what triggered me, I have spoken with Suzanne in the past about what we do and what she's stepping into, was the article in the Journal World where she talked about she's going to look at racial profiling. And if it's on her plate to understand racial profiling, I think if we work together or if we understand what she's doing, it may help us amplify our impact in the community. And she has in the past shared willingness to come interact with us. So if I think somebody else who's trying to look at racial profiling is wanting to interact with us, I would like to pick their brains too.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board of the board? Jane?
I have a question, Jane Gibson, board member. Sanjay, did you envision her presentation as having an impact on this work that we're doing now on the ordinance? I'm wondering, the reason I'm asking is I wonder if, since we're trying to move full steam ahead and get this thing together and gather data, try to understand what the community wants and what they would think about it, would it be possible to delay until after we have that all together? Or is that a bad, I mean, if you think it's relevant to what we're doing, then yeah.
up to us, but Sanjay Mishra, board member, Jane, that's a great question. And if I'm thinking about which direction to go, I want to, that's a community, that's a population I want to hear from too, right? Is what do they see? And they may see it from a very different perspective. And it may be very educating for us to understand the prosecutor's perspective on racial profiling. And it may, yeah, absolutely inform some of the things that we do. But again, this is the board's prerogative.
Stephanie.
Stephanie Littleton. I do think that the timing is good as they're, starting up new in January. Definitely, I think the timing's good as long as we have enough time with what we're for our agenda, that we don't add any additional to it, that I think most of us are focused on, obviously trying to get this communication out there to the community. That's going to be obviously the priority, but I think if we could set some time for her, I think that would be really important.
Okay. Jane.
Jane Gibson, board member. So if we think of the DA's office as being a source of feedback on the ordinance, maybe we could finish getting all of our materials together, our survey, and start that process, and then have her in as she can provide us with feedback. Is that so? Maybe in February, Sanjay?
Or March. Yeah.
I'm thinking that we need to get our materials together and then think about her input as, data.
I agree.
Sanjay Mishra, board member, absolutely agree. When I think the DA's office is a resource which we haven't tapped into. And because one of their objectives clearly aligns with what we are supposed to be doing. So that's why I thought maybe if we work together, or if we understand that we are traveling the same road, we can hitch a ride, or they can come on top of, we come on our backs. So that's my goal.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Stephanie.
Board member Stephanie Littleton. I'm trying to get the mute off and on. I agree, Sanjay, the partnership is really important. But I think maybe the timeline, to Jane's point, is maybe like the February meeting. We'll just have to reassess in January for that, and then see if maybe February is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with Jane. I would welcome her feedback on providing her some of the materials we'll have, certainly the ordinance, and then get some feedback from her in her understanding of Douglas County, Lawrence, all of the above. Okay, sounds good. So it sounds like we'll consider this perhaps for the February agenda. We'll know better certainly in our January meeting, whether that will work. Is everyone good with that?
I was going to, Tonia, Sanjay Mishra, board member, I was going to suggest, because her time also, if we want to block off some times on her calendar, we may need to approach her sooner rather than later. So,
absolutely.
So Brandon can explore if she can come in the Feb or she can come in the March. We may propose Feb, but she can say, look, that day I'm busy, so I will come in March. And possibly, or come in April. And at least we know we have her on the calendar.
Right. So if we could, Brandon, it sounds like certainly ask if she might be available, certainly for the February meeting, and perhaps pencil in for the March meeting as well.
And City Manager Brandon McGuire, we can accommodate that, yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay. Any other agenda items or items that for discussion that we have? Brandon, were we supposed to visit something at the end? I can't remember.
Assistant City Manager Brandon McGuire. No, that was the last item on the agenda, since we reordered and put the original 5th item first.
Right, and then do we have some follow-up that we need to revisit going forward for the content, the presentation, and Stephanie's request?
Tonia, Bill has his hand up.
Okay, Bill?
We've reached the end of the agenda. I move we adjourn.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
This board member, Stephen Littleton, I would like, Tonia, where you were going with that is to circle back and maybe Sergeant Ernst can assist with that. And the thought of, and I know we're going to probably be looking down the road, and I don't know how it's not really a priority or critical at this point, but it would be nice to get some a report back on the public engagement so we can kind of keep it touch on that.
Okay, why don't we put that as an agenda item at the next meeting then, just to briefly discuss, okay?
Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Assistant City Manager Brandon McGuire. Lieutenant Ernst and I spoke about that. If the board is looking for 2020 information, they will be working on that report in January, following the end of the year. And so that report would not be expected to be available until the February 14th meeting based on the board's meeting timeline.
This board member, Stephen Littleton, I apologize, it's Lieutenant Ernst. I already forgot that. Sorry, Lieutenant. But no, I was actually leaning more towards the 2019 because we've not heard on that. We do know that 2020 is going to be pretty limited. So.
Okay.
Lieutenant, you want to?
The only other thing too is I'm going to be away.
Sorry, speaking to that one.
Lieutenant David Ernst, where's the speaker? Right here.
Right there, yeah.
I'm going to be out. I'm actually going to be in Hutchinson in training. I hope to attend the meeting, but the Wi-Fi can be spotty down there, so I'd hate to schedule myself to present at the meeting in January.
Okay, all right, very good, thank you. Stephanie?
I was just going to say, this board member, Stephen Littleton, you know, I think we really need to keep our time open for January, all for the communication plan, and then February for, if we're going to add the DA. So we, you know, once again, not priority. Maybe move it to March or even April. I'm really okay with that. I'd just like to get somewhere on that calendar so we don't lose sight of that. You know, it shouldn't be too involved, but it'd be nice to know it. Even if they can put the report together and send it to us.
Well, and that could be a possibility. I actually, if I'm not mistaken, the 29th, so I just got moved into the unit, but the 2019 report is done. So I will interact with Brandon on a way where we could just provide that to you. There would then be no discussion about it other than you just have the information.
Yeah, you know, that's the least that gets us going, Lieutenant Ernst. I think that's a good start.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Very good, thank you for clearing that up. That was the loose end. So we've got a motion on the floor.
Second.
And a second from Sanjay. All those in favor signify with a yay. We'll start with Sanjay.
Yes, Sanjay Mishra, board member, yes.
Bill?
Board member Graybill, yay.
Jane?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Marie's having too much fun. I say yes too.
Marie?
This is the vote to adjourn, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yay. Marie Taylor.
Okay. And Jenny?
Board Member Robinson, yay.
Very good. And I vote a yay too. Once again, that motion was by Bill and seconded by Sanjay, and we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everybody. If I don't see you.
Thank you, everybody.
Hopefully we don't meet. Yeah, good. Have a good holiday.